And let's continue our talk of the origins of Maison Blanche department store. Now, of course, I we've done part one where we talked about Abraham Shwartz and A. Shwartz and Son. And of course, Abraham is the father of Simon Shwartz, who is the founder of Maison Blanche and gets that whole thing rolling. So in the first part, we talked about A. Schwartz and Son, and Abraham's coming to America, working with the Kaufmans and then other folks, and starting his store and develop and growing it. Now we're going to talk about the younger son moving into the business, who is Simon. So of course, A. Schwartz and Son was Abraham, and son was his son Isaac, or Nathan Isaac, you see in official stuff. And so they were always the pair until Leon and Simon got older and became part of the business. And then, of course, that's what we're going to talk about now, is Simon going off and doing working with his dad and then doing things on his own. I am, of course, Edward Branley, your NOLA history guy, at NOLA history guy on all social media. Ask me anything about New Orleans history. Don't ask me anything about anything, but yeah, Reddit, this ain't. Get the idea there. Okay, so part two now, our origins of Maison Blanche, now talking about S.J. Schwartz and Company, or leading up to S.J. Schwartz and Company. So first, we'll talk about who was Simon J. Schwartz. We'll talk about Simon's involvement in the family business, the fire in the 701 block in the Turo buildings in 1892, and then how the store A. Schwartz and Son gets to 901 Canal temporarily, and then that starts Simon on the path towards Canal and Dauphine and the Maison Blanche. Simon J. Schwartz. Now, this is a 1903 photo from a book called A History of Jews in Louisiana. And it's like a who's who biography, kind really fascinating stuff in terms of both the biographies that are in there, and it's a true who's who. It's only living folks. So things like Gus Schulhofer, the one of the original founders of MB with Simon, is not in that book because he passed away already. That kind of thing. Abraham, his daddy, is gone. Isidore is still in that book because he passes a couple of years later. So Isidore Newman, that is. Well, anyway, okay, so this is a photo from that book from 1900. So this is a photo of Simon Schwartz in 1903. So he's 36 years old in that photo. He was born in 1867 to Abraham Shwartz and his wife, who was Julie Kaufman. Now, Julie Kaufman is the sister of the Kaufman brothers, and we talked about how Abraham goes in and partners up with his brothers-in-law, who then they partner up and split up, and that's kind of the story of the Kaufmans overall, is they partner up with a lot of people over time. So now Simon is born then from Abraham, and Abraham and Julie are his parents. He's the third brother, Nathan Isaac first, and then Leon, and now Simon. He's worked in the family business since childhood. His biography in this History of Jews in Louisiana talks about Simon going to work with his dad from the age of 6. Yeah, it's like, what do? You're hanging out with the old man kind of thing before you go to school, that sort of stuff. So he's basically been in the family business since a child at that point. Now, by 1889, there's a bit of a career gap there we'll talk about, because he goes off to New York. He comes back, and in 1889 he marries Clara Newman, who is the oldest daughter of Isidore Newman, and that is as Isidore Newman, as in Newman School, and the banker, the factor, the investment broker that we all know because of his incredible business acumen, and then of course his philanthropy. So they get married in March of 1889. So now Simon is basically part of the Newman family at that point. The family business. Again, he goes to work with his old man. He goes to work at A. Shwartz and Son since around the age of 6. So if he's born in 1867, that's 1873, 1874. He's experienced since a kid the different iterations of A. Shwartz and Son that we talked about last time. Go back and listen to that. That was fun to do because it's just some of the stuff in researching that, it's like I was focused on MB, so I didn't really look into, 30 years earlier kind of stuff in a lot of cases. That was fun to look into. So he goes off. Obviously he is growing up basically in the family business. Simon goes to school, uh, 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 gets a business degree. He they I don't want to say that I'm inferring this, but I don't want to say they didn't know what to do with him, but you had two older brothers and dad involved in the store already. So by the time Simon was 16, he was ready to go out into the retail world, but it was a little bit crowded at A. Shwartz and Son. So what Abraham does is he sets up Simon as the store's buyer in New York City. And now this, of course, is a big deal because, well, we talked about this in the Krause book before, not as much in the MB book, but the Krauses did the same thing where they always had somebody in a New York office to keep an eye on the garment district up there. And of course, this is all, God, I don't want this to sound like I'm, some conspiracy thing. It's all the Jews. No, really, it's a Jewish business. So for Simon to go up and start using his dad's connections and saying, "Hey, I am, representing my old man up here," that's a big deal. So he's learning a lot about the retail business on the back end in terms of, being a buyer and merchandising and everything else. In addition to that, he's in the greatest city in the world. I mean, he's in New York, and of course, again, that's the garment district, and all of the different Jewish merchandising houses and all of the stores. He's learning how retail is done in the big city. And so that, of course, is filling his head with all kind of wonderful ideas, right? So he returns to New Orleans in 1889. Now, at this point, it's kind of like, hey, Dad, I want to set my roots back down in New Orleans. Dad is like, we certainly understand, son. He comes home. He marries the girl, and Dad and older brother bring Simon and Leon into the partnership. So by January of 1890, A. Shwartz and Son is occupying 3 units in the Turo buildings: 123, 131, and 133. So remember, they started in 131 when they moved to the 701 block. Then they expanded when they bought Danziger's, or they acquired, the Danziger slot. Now they've got 123, which is the corner of Bourbon and Canal as well. They pump a ton of money into 123, putting in an elevator and really sprucing up everything. And they officially moved the location of the store in October of 1890. Unfortunately, it should be February 16th. I typoed that. My bad. A big fire, of course, in the Turo buildings destroys the store in February of 1892. So here's an ad in the paper announcing the co-partnership. This is where In July of 1889, Simon and Leon become members of the A. Shwartz and Son partnership, where it now becomes A. Shwartz and Sons, as you can see. It's Abraham and Nathan. Nathan was the and son, and now Leon and Simon are brought in. The Turo buildings in 1890, of course, as we said, A. Shwartz and Son had been in 123, 131, and 133. And you can see here's a hosiery sale in 1890. So the and Sons things are rolling along. The store is pretty big. They're working on combining all of this into one big store, which they do in October of 1890. This is the grand opening. Like I say, they took the corner, put in an elevator in the 4 stories, widened up, expanded this out, and so it was all ready by that fall, getting ready for the fall winter holiday season. So the store opens on Sunday, October 6th, and here's a news notice in the paper the next day. A. Schwartz and Sons grand opening, and the palatial establishment thronged all day with ladies. Beautiful souvenirs given away. It's a full article. Anybody wants to read it, just ping me. I'll send you the I pulled this out of the paper. Be happy to send that to you. So things are chugging along. The three brothers are working for Dad at Canal in Bourbon. And the big thing here is that A. Schwartz and Sons is now playing in the big leagues. They're a 4 story store with a lot of square footage and an elevator to get up. Remember, the Turo buildings were typical New Orleans or typical European architecture in many ways, where you had retail on the first floor, and then just about everywhere in the French Quarter, you have retail on the first floor, and then the townhouse or the row houses would be residential up top. This is now 4 stories, 4 floors of retail in the Turo, in the 701s. That's a departure from the overall history since Turo built those in the late in 1749. So basically what it is now is Abraham and the boys are playing in the show. They are working at a level. They're competitive with D.H. Holmes. They're competitive with Gachos. They are competitive with the Fellman with Leon Fellman basically, who has moved over to Canal and Dauphine to the Mercier building. So they're playing in the big leagues at this point. Right up until February 16th, 1892, which is the big fire in the 701 block of Canal. And you can see this is the fire has been suppressed, but look how much of the 701 block of the Turo buildings has been lost. You can see on the right side of the photo, that's a continuation of the 701 block, where you can see the basically everything from Bourbon Street back to, you can see the burned out, the front, the storefront of Werlein's is still visible, but everything else in between has just burned down at this point. This is 1892, so there's a couple of notes on the street. Look at the hack carriages that are there. Can you imagine somebody parking on right in, these carriages, these hacks are just, they're just parked there on the inside lane of Canal Street, because there were no automobiles yet to speak of. Everything, it's like you could see the wagons and the carriages bringing people to and fro. The big tower is what's called a moonlight tower. It was an alternative to Edison bulbs for electric street illumination. It was big arc lights that it was called moonlight because it was not extremely bright like turning up your phone screen to 11 or something, but it provided a good moonlight nighttime illumination for the retail area. That concept doesn't pan out because the Edison bulb wins because as commercial electrification continues. You can see things were electrified at this time. You can see the light poles, the electric poles feeding the Canal Street businesses along the street. One of the news articles in the wake of the fire talks about Nathan talking about how they believe the fire started as an electrical fire, and that to anybody these days, a fire, fire breaks out in your electrical system, that can create a lot of damage, and that doesn't phase or affect anybody. The At the time, though, this is the beginning of commercial electrification, and for a business owner of the statue of Nathan Isaac Shwartz to talk about a problem with the electrical system upset advocates of electrification a good bit. Uh, was he right? I mean, hey, it's like I said, hindsight's 2020. We look back on on decades of century of electrical fires since then, and certainly it's certainly believable. The one thing that's not electrified that you see in this picture, of course, is street rail. You can see the Stevenson bobtails, the mule-drawn streetcars are still in the middle of the street here. That's because the New Orleans and Carrollton Railroad doesn't electrify till 1893, and then New Orleans City Railroad Company, which runs the Canal Line, the Esplanade Line, St. Claude, and a couple of others, those don't electrify till 1895. So, of course, this is 1892, so we still have the mule-drawn streetcars. This just breaks my heart. This is just tragedy in just written all over all over this photo. But of course, it's minimal loss of life because it was all commercial buildings. It's like you get the heck out, that kind of thing. And the fire department shut it down as quick as possible. The D.H. Holmes on the side. Now remember, Holmes is about 4 buildings in. That's going to be Krieger's. It's going to be Krieger's in the shoe store on the corner of Bourbon. But D.H. Holmes wraps around those 2 storefronts. That's now the Walgreens at Bourbon and Canal. D.H. Holmes and of course now the hotel wrap around those 2 so that the restaurant is right there, or well, it's still a restaurant right there on the side entrance on Bourbon. And the reports were that Holmes got damaged because of the smoke and the heat, but obviously the buildings were intact and the buildings were fine. Just a tragedy, it's just what a hot mess. But between insurance and well, big thing is insurance, obviously, and the business having assets. The Schwartzes obviously are ready to just get back to work and go to it. News article on the 18th, so 2 days later, talking about this is $2 million in 1892 dollars. Anybody want to go pull up the calculator and figure that out? It's sure, go ahead and let us know, just how much that is in modern dollars and that kind of thing. The magnificent trade palaces of Schwartz, Wehrlein, Claverius, Bunkel, Levy, Krause, and Krieger. The Krause store, of course, that Krause's had the Krause brothers had bespoke women's goods store that was fronted on Bourbon at the time. So that was of course damaged. All of the stores that fronted in the Turo buildings, again, D.H. Holmes incurred damage on the Bourbon Street side where the restaurant would be and still is a restaurant for the hotel. Uh, the fire actually does break out in the Schwartz store, but see, it's at 10:30 a.m., so it's easy to evacuate everybody. So it's kind of that, you know. Um, and in an hour, it's a pile of smoldering ruins. The fire response, as you can see, conspicuous gallantry of the members of the fire department. Yeah, it was. They shut it down. They got it closed down quick, but it only took an hour to do that destruction that we saw in the photo. I've always believed that the fire and the stress of trying to recover, uh, I think that was enough for the patriarch, for Abraham Shwartz. He passes away. Remember, the fire is the 16th of February, and Abraham passes in the beginning of March, on the 8th of March, and this is the obit for Abraham in on March the 9th of 1892. This is another one that if you're following some of the Jewish history, this is a very, obits are where you learn your genealogy. Let's put it that way, right? That kind of thing. So it's a real solid tribute to a very distinguished and honorable businessman. And of course, now with Abraham passing, the partnership, the co-partnership, if you will, is still the three brothers, but this more or less leaves Nathan Isaac. This leaves Isaac in charge, essentially. Although pretty much from a day-to-day point of view, up to the co-partnership and including the 1889 till the fire, Nathan was pretty much in charge. Abraham was the was Pawpaw at that point. So in the aftermath of the fire, the three brothers waste no time. I mean, they pause to bury their father, but they're moving as quickly as they can. And one of the things that's revealed in this process is the extent to which Simon had been preparing to leave the family business. And the way this comes up is the family business burns down. They get together, and Simon says, well, by the way, I've been doing this work to set up my own place with help from my father-in-law, the rich Newman guy. He was looking to invest. Yeah, obviously, the old man's looking to invest in his son-in-law. So things had started to roll already for Simon in at Canal and Dauphine in the 900 block in the Mercier building. But the family business burns. So Simon comes to to Isaac and Leon and says, well, hey, we were preparing this. Let's just move the established business down here till you guys can get 701 back under control. So they move the store, basically establish the store physically. There's a store that was going out of business that was Kern and Son. They assume the financial obligations and the stock of Kern and Son and reopen a Shwartz and Son on the corner of Canal and Dauphine at 901 Canal Street. Now, remember the history here. 901 Dauphine, well, actually, it starts in the 700 and 701 block, right? Because Christ Episcopal Second Incarnation is there at the corner of Canal and Bourbon. Judah Turo buys up the block and builds the four-story Turo row houses. That grows on. Christ Episcopal moves and builds their Gothic church, the well-known church that you see in early photos from the 1850s till the 1880s. They build that church at Canal and Dauphine. They're ready to move. They're thinking, let's move uptown and expand and hit the neighborhood up there because basically Canal Street in the French Quarter is becoming very commercialized and not very Episcopal in that respect. So they're ready to move. They put up the church at Canal and Dauphine. They put it up for auction in 1883. The Merciers buy the corner, tear down the church, and build the Mercier buildings, which then a lot of people move into. Leon Fellman splits with his brother Bernard, moves down there. And Simon Schwartz is looking at setting himself up in the Mercier buildings at this time. He's come back. He's got these grand ideas about a store that's of a grander scope than what his brother has in mind, even though his brother is listening because that's why they built out Canal and Bourbon. But anyway, Simon is doing all this, but then the fire hits and he becomes a loyal member of the Schwartz family and says, no, let's put the established business here. They buy out this other store. Now they've got stuff. They've got stuff to sell, a place to sell it, and they open the store again in basically as quick as possible. So you can see the right after the fire, they've gathered together. They said, we're going to do this. And they announced that they're going to reopen the store at the end of the month. Here's what the store looked like. Here's what the corner Canal and Dauphine looked like in 1893 with A. Schwartz and Sons anchoring the building. So now this is the Mercier buildings. This was Christ Episcopal until 1884. The Merciers demolished this building and build up. You can see it's in a row house configuration that if you look, you see the corner, and then you've got the corner is one set, then there's another row house type 3 stories and the attic there next to the cupola. So you can see basically I take it back, it's 4 stories. So you can see it's basically set up to lease out to multiple tenants. So Simon is looking to lease or had already negotiated with the Merciers for the corner row house here below the cupola. This is where he had planned to set up his store and go from there. But of course, the fire changes that, and you can see he moves the family business to 901, and you can see the sign there above the first floor on the corner of Canal and Dauphine says A. Schwartz and Sons. So the 3 sons move the store down to 901 Canal. Abraham passes away. They're chugging along here. But of course, Simon has his plans for 901, and Nathan's got the insurance money to rebuild at in the 701 block. So this is very much a temporary situation. I don't know. I don't think there's any bad blood here. I think it's just Isaac wanted to run his store. Simon has a much grander idea, and he's got very grand financing coming from Isidore Newman, his father-in-law. So this is where we're going to leave it for now, because this is A. Schwartz and Son, which in a couple of years, in another year and a half, moves back to the 701 block. Simon takes the space back as S.J. Schwartz and Company, and we're going to pick up there with the final piece of this Origins at some point, and we'll talk about how S.J. Schwartz and Company becomes the Maison Blanche. Greetings from NOlA. Again, shout out to greetingstour.com with their homage to the old Kirk Tyke greetings from postcards. This is at St. Joe at Magazine in Joseph Street, Uptown, big mural. Follow them on at Greetings Tour on Instagram or they're on their website if you love these old, like I say, it's modernized versions of the old postcards, and that just makes me so happy. A word from your sponsor. Buy my books, of course, the Brothers book, the Canal Streetcar book, which brings up a lot of this stuff in conjunction with the development and evolution of the Canal Streetcar line. There's a bit of this stuff in the MB book, but the book, well, of course, it was only 128 pages. The origin story in the book is nowhere near as detailed as what we're getting into here, because we wanted to talk about MB, not the predecessors. The jazz book, wonderful overview, so much fun to do. And then legendary locals of New Orleans, the basically 180 people over 300 years. I always tell librarians, school librarians, you want this book in your library because that way, when one of the students comes in, my teacher says I need to do a project on it on somebody from New Orleans. Throw them this book, get them to work. The Krause book, a whole nother story of the Jewish retail community. Uh, there's connections and crossovers, and we've talked about those in blog posts and everything. We'll continue to talk about that as we go along because, of course, Leon Feldman builds this building for his nephews, the Krause brothers, who are right around the corner and suffer damage in the fire. Then they move down here in 1903 and are here from 1903 to 1907. Great story, fun book to do. Remember, of course, I am Edward Brandley, your NOLA history guy, NOLAhistoryguy.com, Edward at NOLAhistoryguy.com. Hunt me down on social media. You ever have a question, comment, thought, by all means, please shoot me a note. I'll be happy to see if we can figure something out for you. Shout out to the folks who made this wonderful PowerPoint template and put it into the comments.